Hello, I hope this video finds you well wherever you are. This is week number 2 of staying at home because it's too cold to go outside. So once again, I'll read the readings from here and I'll give the sermon from here. I'll post the psalm in the description of the YouTube video if you'd like to read along responsively. The first reading is 2 Kings chapter 2 verses 1 through 12. Now when the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven by a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were on their way to Gilgal. Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here, for the Lord has sent me as far as Bethel." But Elisha said, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So they went down to Bethel. The company of the prophets who were in Bethel came up to Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that today the Lord will take your master away from you?" And he said, "Yes, I know. Keep silent." Elijah said to him, "Elisha, stay here, for the Lord has sent me to Jericho." But he said, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So they came to Jericho. The company of prophets who were at Jericho drew near to Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that today the Lord will take your master away from you?" And he answered, "Yes, I know. Be silent." Then Elijah said to him, "Stay here, for the Lord has sent me to the Jordan." But he said, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So the two of them went on. 50 men of the company of prophets also went, and stood at some distance from them, as they were both standing by the Jordan. Then Elijah took his mantle and rolled it up and struck the water. The water was parted to the one side and to the other until the two of them crossed on dry ground. When they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, "Tell me what I may do for you before I am taken from you." Elisha said, "Please let me inherit a double share of your spirit." He responded, "You have asked a hard thing. Yet, if you see me as I am being taken from you, it will be granted you. If not, it will not." As they continued walking and talking, a chariot of fire and horses of fire separated the two of them, and Elijah ascended in a whirlwind into heaven. Elisha kept watching and crying out, "Father, Father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen." But when he could no longer see him, he grasped his own clothes and tore them in 2 pieces. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. The psalm is Psalm 50, verses 1 through 6. The mighty one, God the Lord, has spoken, calling the earth from the rising of the sun to its setting. Out of Zion, perfect in its beauty, God shines forth in glory. Our God will come and will not keep silence, with a consuming flame before and round about a raging storm. God calls the heavens and the earth from above to witness the judgments of the people. Gather before me, my loyal followers, those who have made a covenant with me and sealed it with sacrifice. The heavens declare the righteousness of God's cause, for it is God who is judge. The second reading is 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 3 through 6. Even if our gospel is veiled, it is veiled to those who are perishing. In their case, the God of this world has blinded the minds of the unbelievers to keep them from seeing the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. For we do not proclaim ourselves. We proclaim Jesus Christ as Lord, and ourselves as your slaves for Jesus' sake. For it is the God who said, "Let light shine out of the darkness," who has shone in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. The gospel is from Mark chapter 9, verses 2 through 9. Gospel of the Lord. Glory to you, O. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up a high mountain apart by themselves, and he was transfigured before them. And his clothes became dazzling white, such as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to them Elijah with Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He did not know what to say, for they were terrified. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud there came a voice, "This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him." Suddenly, when they looked around, they saw no one with them anymore, but only Jesus. And they were coming down the mount. As they were coming down the mountain, he ordered them to tell no one about what they had seen until after the Son of Man had risen from the dead. The gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. We have a lot of things going on today. It's Valentine's Day, it's Transfiguration Sunday, it's the last Sunday before Lent begins. And two of those things are related. The story of the Transfiguration sets us up to begin our Lenten journey. We start and end on a high note, with the Transfiguration and the Resurrection bookending the darker, more solemn time of Lent. Each of the synoptic gospel writers have their own take on the Transfiguration, but to really understand the significance of this passage, we need to not only get out of Mark, we need to get out of the Bible entirely. Euripides was a grumpy Athenian playwright who lived 400 years before Jesus. His play, the Bacchae, tells the story of the god Dionysus returning to the city of his human mother to punish the people who refused to believe that she bore a divine child, the son of Zeus. If you want to read something really frustratingly sad, check it out. It's considered one of the best tragedies in history, but it's also absolutely brutal. But I bring this up because throughout most of the play, Dionysus, a god, appears in human form. Much like Jesus, he is a divine being on earth, putting on human clothes. Unlike Jesus, Dionysus doesn't hold back. Once he reveals his divine nature, he owns it. He causes earthquakes, controls human minds, and apparently turns some people into snakes. And there are many other stories of divine beings disguised as humans who suddenly reveal their full powers, and when they do, it's no secret. They generously reward their supporters. They fiercely punish and humiliate their enemies for their hubris. They topple entire kingdoms, put heroes in the grave, shake the earth, and make sure everyone knows who they are. Once a god has been revealed to you, you can't just go back to ignorance. Your relationship with them is permanently changed. The Transfiguration gets a little played out, being such a popular pre-Lent gospel reading. So we often miss the extraordinary event captured here. This is the divinity of Jesus being fully revealed. This is the moment in a story in which the God character reveals their true self, hiding behind the human mask. You would expect tremendous displays of power here. But Jesus doesn't cause an earthquake. Jesus doesn't metamorph his enemies into snakes or frogs or something. Jesus doesn't float away and take Jerusalem with divine powers. In fact, not only does Jesus not continue to reveal his power like one would expect, he also tells his disciples not to share this story with anyone else. This is being kept top secret. But what gives? Why is Jesus breaking all the rules for divine revelation? Now, even if Peter and his companions didn't know about the other stories of divine encounters by humans that existed out there, the author of this gospel certainly did. He was familiar enough with Greek literature to write his own cohesive narrative, which is not something easy to do in the ancient world. Furthermore, since this was being written in Greek, it stands to reason that the intended audience also knew Greek and probably the related literature. The people writing, reading, and sharing this story knew what to expect from a theophany, a visible manifestation of God or a god. Jesus is going against the norm on purpose here. But why? In other stories, the moment when someone reveals themselves to be a god is a turning point. At this point in the story, all the other characters are suddenly forced to recontextualize everything they knew about that person before. Everything the person said or did in the past has to be converted in their memory from something done by a human to something done by a god. The same is true of anything they do going forward. Think about it like this. If you suddenly learned that I am, in fact, a time traveler coming from the future, you'd have to rethink everything I've said. Any major predictions I'd made would suddenly become a lot more certain. You'd have to think that my opinions, values, and beliefs were based on some time in the future rather than now. You wouldn't be able to go back to seeing me the way you see me now. Everything I do or say would be different. Here's another example. My boss at the YMCA told me this week that she recently learned about a former teacher of hers who had just gotten in trouble for having some illegal and highly inappropriate content on his computer. Once she heard this, she thought back to interactions she had with this teacher as a student, and red flags started going up where they hadn't before. When we learn something big about someone, whether good or bad, that changes all the little things we see about them. And for the disciples, discovering that Jesus is actually God incarnate was a very big thing to learn. Nonetheless, Jesus doesn't further manifest his incredible divine powers openly. Maybe he wants them to reinterpret everything in the light of this moment. Maybe Jesus wants them to think back to his previous teachings with the added weight that they are coming from God. Maybe Jesus wants them to have this experience in the back of their minds going forward. Important events are coming. Jesus wants to show them that an all-powerful God can face conflict without committing violence. That an all-powerful God can go quietly to the cross and the grave without lashing out in retribution. Jesus wants them to know he is God incarnate. So when they watch him humbly serve and care for others, they know that's what God does. God cares about us. God loves us. When God's full power is revealed, it still comes to us through love, mercy, and guidance. While it is true that God also has divine wrath to sort the holy from the unholy, the things that God makes righteous from the things corrupted by sin, the lesson Jesus chooses to teach his disciples is that even God, with infinite power and divine authority, serves and heals with love and mercy. God isn't afflicted by arrogance springing up from fragile confidence. God doesn't have to prove anything. God doesn't need to destroy or do magic to demonstrate that God has power. God already knows it. And of course, there's an easy personal application to make from this. If God isn't arrogant with all that power, we have no reason to be. If we are following the example set by Jesus, then even at the height of our power, whether that be personal confidence, social capital, financial security, or something else, we should humbly serve our neighbors. We should accept the path that God has set us on, even if it leads to death. We should not think too highly of ourselves to labor for what God calls us. Not even Jesus, God incarnate, revealed in full splendor in today's message, would do that. But I think there's another way of looking at this. In this secret revelation, Jesus gave his disciples a special gift. They could now see everything differently. The rest of the life of Jesus, they could view through the filter of God incarnate. Their relationship with Jesus changed. They were no longer friends with a man, they were friends with God revealed, but specifically, God revealed in the ordinary. This God doesn't cease to be their friend. How does the world look different to us when we see God revealed in the ordinary? This is perhaps something for us to consider throughout our Lenten journey. God comes to us through word and sacrament, the divine hidden in the ordinary. But God also appears to us through the vocations of our neighbors. Through the eyes of faith, with the guidance of this lesson, we can see the full power of the divine in all the simple ordinary things. Every building safely constructed by hard-working construction crews is a blessing from God. Every time a young adult graduates high school after years of care and education from a dedicated team of teachers, administrators, and support staff, God is blessing the community. When our ordinary world works, God is active in it. The same God revealed in the glorious, dazzling Jesus on the mountain is also hidden in the humble man Jesus on the road to Jerusalem. Sometimes it feels hard to see God at work. Sometimes God seems distant, up on a high mountain, being kept secret by a few special favored disciples. But that isn't really the case. The fact that we have this story proves that the secret has long been broken. God is revealed, but doesn't stay distant. God comes down the mountain, lives and works among the people, and then goes up to the cross. God is made manifest to us outside of the daily grind of the world through Sunday worship and word and sacrament, so that we can see that same God at work in the day-to-day labor of our regular lives. God is here, and God is at work, at home, at school, on the road, and everywhere else. Thanks be to God for this revelation. Amen.